to the Argonaut with Jason Economou. I'm your host, Jason Economou. I have been struggling with how to start this podcast, really just how to get it going from the beginning. I had this idea of what this show would be, that I would link it all together with this narrative, this concept of Greek mythological figures, and that's kind of why I called it the Argonaut. And in the time since I first began this journey, things have just changed and evolved. As I said at the start of this all, my name is Jason Economou. I am a Maui-based attorney and consultant. And the truth is, I do a lot more consulting than I do lawyering. So though I am a licensed attorney and have been for over a decade now, it's hard to consider myself as an active attorney because really where my heart lies is on the policy side of law. I love legislation. I love where law meets people and where it makes things happen. And I don't mean that in sort of the criminal law sense or in the civil law where people are getting sued. I don't really enjoy the courtroom stuff particularly, and I definitely don't enjoy writing motions and briefings. What I love is seeing this process that we've created as a people, this process that began in its infancy thousands of years ago. Representatives of the people coming up with laws to govern the people. And I love seeing how it's evolved over millennia, and I love seeing the interplay with our day-to-day lives. I live and work in Maui County, and if you live here and work here, you might already be familiar with me. I had a job that brought me in front of the Maui County Council a lot, and I spent a lot of time doing legislative advocacy on a local level. And I also was fortunate enough recently to be featured in a couple of commercials for housing that have gotten a lot of play on YouTube, targeting Maui folks. So if you're not on Maui, there's a good chance you've never seen my face before. But if you live on Maui, there's a good chance you are sick of seeing my face every time you want to watch a YouTube clip. And if you follow local politics, you might have seen my name in the news a few times, particularly in the context of housing. So I used to work for a group called the Realtors Association of Maui. And at some point, I'm sure I'll dig into it. The Realtors Association's really on a national level. It's a huge organization, and they have an immense amount of money and influence and power when it comes to American government. And I don't just mean the federal government or the state government or local governments. I mean all of them. The way that it's structured is their program, their advocacy really goes throughout all of our American systems. And they're very proud of that. That's not really a secret, but it's one of those things that people aren't really particularly aware of in your day-to-day life. So having worked for them for about 5 years, I got a real good glimpse into the world of policy and legislative advocacy and an understanding of how special interests really do help shape and mold the direction that our government flows in. I wouldn't say that I'm ashamed of anything that I did while working for them, but it was a weird experience, and I think that it taught me a lot. And I think throughout this process of recording this podcast and sharing it with you all, my audience, we'll probably delve into that. But not today. Today, I just really want to introduce myself and what I'm doing here. So I had this job in legislative advocacy working for the Realtors for about 5 years. In that time, I started a podcast, and it was called the Ram Gad Pod. And because, it's the internet and the internet age in the 21st century, you could find that online now. I don't get any money for it. Nobody gets any money for it. It was a free podcast that I put out, and it got a lot of traction. It did pretty well, and it was a great way to inform the Realtor members and anybody else that wanted to listen about things that were going on in Maui County, and specifically issues relating to property rights and housing policy in Maui County. Well, after I left the Realtors, I had folks asking me when I was going to start a new podcast. People wanted to hear my take on things, which is kind of interesting because in truth, I don't know if I was ever really all that honest during the Ram Gad pod because I was always wearing a suit. I was wearing a costume. I was playing a character. I was playing Jason Economou, who works for the Realtors Association. I've since taken that costume off. Now it's just me, Jason. I have a law firm / consulting firm. It's called Economou Law and Consulting. And I am my own boss now. I obviously I have clients and I rely on them. So I am a bit beholden to behaving in a manner that they would appreciate and saying things that they wouldn't have too much of a problem with. But really, I can be myself for the first time, and that is terrifying. I tried starting this podcast for several months now. I was fortunate enough to get a sponsor, and the initial plan was for me to come out with episodes right before Christmas, and then episodes at the start of January, and then episodes at the start of February. And here we are, halfway through the month of March, and I have several episodes that I've already recorded, and I just can't get them out in the world yet because I don't like the first episode that I recorded. There's nothing wrong with it, but I'm still wearing a suit. That first episode that I recorded back must be December now when I first recorded it. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel like me. It feels like me trying to pretend to be me. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to put that out in the world. So what you're going to get instead is this stream of consciousness, this talking to you, this trying to be an authentic me, because I think you deserve that. And I think that's the only way that this will succeed. So let me get into what this is. This show is an experiment. The format is going to change from time to time, and my goal for it is really that we're going to explore the issues, the real issues that are facing communities today. And I'm not talking about these culture war BS problems. I'm not talking about, red versus blue, Republican versus Democrat. I'm not planning on getting into stuff over, what people do in their bedrooms and how I feel about that. Like, that's really not my business. What I want to talk about is the stuff that I've noticed in my community on Maui and my friends' communities on the mainland and places that I've lived really all over the world. There are certain issues that pop up over and over again. And to tell you the truth, they don't necessarily seem all that exciting, and they get ignored because of it. So my background is housing policy. I was a legislative advocate when it came to housing policy and property rights, and most of the stuff that I advocated for, I generally did agree with. And that's where I'm comfortable. So to begin with, I'm doing a series on housing and Maui's housing crisis, Hawaii's housing crisis, but really the housing crisis that is taking over all over the United States. So these first several episodes you're going to hear from me are going to be interviews and discussions related to housing policy. But that's going to take us in many different directions to address some real problems that I just feel aren't getting enough attention. Where does our water come from? Our drinking water. How much of it do we have? How does that impact our ability to create communities? What do we do with our wastewater? What do we do with our waste, our trash? What are we going to be doing about this housing crisis as it evolves into a bigger homeless crisis? How are we taking care of our children? How are we educating them? What kind of help are we giving to those with mental disabilities? What kind of help are we giving to just people that need help? These are the real issues that every community today is struggling with, but CNN and Fox News and anybody else would rather talk about whatever Donald Trump said on Truth Social, or who Taylor Swift is dating, or the war that's going on in Israel. Those are not all the same. They're not. They vary in import, and some of them are particularly important, when it comes to wars that are devastating communities compared to when it comes to who a pop star is dating. So I don't want to create a false equivalency amongst those things, but those things, what they have in common is they're not impacting my day-to-day life. They're not impacting most of our day-to-day lives. But here in Maui County, as somebody who lives in this community, somebody who's raising a family in this community, the housing crisis very much impacts me. It very much has me worried about the future of my friends and their families and my own family and their security here in this place that they call home. And I think if you're on Maui listening to this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you are elsewhere listening to this, you probably still know what I'm talking about. this crisis over affordable housing and really just affordable life, it's getting to be a lot. It's getting to be too much for a lot of communities. So that's where we're going to spend a lot of time early on with this podcast. And as I mentioned, that'll come in the form of interviews, that'll come in the form of discussions, and I hope it comes in the form of debates as well. I really want to challenge a lot of the perspectives that we hold on to. I want to challenge a lot of the narratives that are floating about. I want to challenge the stories that we tell ourselves to excuse not solving these problems for generations to come. So that kind of gives you some context of where we're starting out. Now, just about me. I am a graduate of a college called the Citadel, which is a military school in South Carolina, and it's an institution that really helped shape me as an individual. And, part of that was I learned the importance of discipline, and I learned the importance of service in particular. I went to law school and became an attorney. I went to Charleston School of Law, and I am proud to say that Charleston School of Law is actually in the process right now of becoming a nonprofit. And their motto was pro bono populi, for the good of the people. And that's something that I've held on to for a long time, that notion that what we do is for the good of the people, because I genuinely believe that none of us grow or exist in a vacuum, that we belong to each other. We belong to our communities. We are just one part of a whole, and we have a duty and an obligation to serve that whole as just an individual part of it. That brought me to joining the Peace Corps. After I finished law school and became an attorney, I practiced law in South Carolina for about 20 minutes and quickly realized that I wasn't ready for that, and I wanted to give service. And Peace Corps was recommended to me by my brother because I was talking about joining the Marines, and he was a Marine, and he said, I think you do an okay job as a Marine, but I think you'd hate it, so you should check out the Peace Corps. And I did, and I am so glad. It was the best job I ever had. It was the best experience. It was difficult. It was trying. It came with a lot of challenges, but I learned a lot about myself and about the world and other people in the world. I learned new levels of compassion and understanding, and I met my now wife, who was also a Peace Corps volunteer, and she was from Maui. And we stayed in Uganda, where we had our service there. We served in Uganda for 2 years as education volunteers. Then we stuck around for another year and a half, 2 years almost, as expats while she worked for Peace Corps Uganda in their offices, and I taught at an international school. We came back to Maui. She wanted to move home, so we came to Maui in 2016. August 2016 is when I got here. And I have been committed to this community since. I got a job practicing law shortly after arriving, took the bar, became an attorney in Hawaii, and I practiced for a few years, a couple of years really, and then I took a job working for the Realtors Association of Maui, and I did that for about 5 years, and really became focused on housing and land use regulation and all the issues surrounding housing. And it was fascinating. It was a fascinating education. It was interesting working for that organization. And after August 8th, there were some wildfires that hit Maui County. They ended up destroying the city of Lahaina. They also had a big impact in upcountry Maui. It got weirder. I reached a point where, my work with the realtors it couldn't go any further. And I left the realtors in October of 2023, and I thought, maybe I should get a new job. Maybe I should go work for the county. And I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to see where that would go. So that's what I'm doing now. I opened up my own firm, and immediately I stayed in housing. I kept on consulting on housing policy issues. I've gotten the privilege of working with some great nonprofits and government organizations as a contractor, just helping set up programs to help house people, helping to build capacity with nonprofits so that they can do their mission of housing or feeding people or whatever it is that the nonprofits are doing. I've gotten the opportunity to be directly involved with some of the recovery efforts on the policy side of things, and it's been incredibly rewarding. And this is kind of an extension of that, this podcast. This is my opportunity to have my own soapbox, and I can share my ideas, the things that I've been working with, things that I've been working on behind closed doors. I can share these concepts now. And it gives me a voice, because even though I provide testimony on things, I provide input on reports, even though I get interviewed from time to time and get to share things via the newspaper, I don't really control those mediums. So this is fun that I get to control this, and I get to publish this, and hopefully I don't say anything embarrassing that'll be on the internet for generations to come. Now, why did I call it the Argonaut? So my name is Jason Economou. If you're not familiar with Greek names, that is a Greek name. Both of those, Jason and Economou. My father is an immigrant from Greece. He came over to America in the 1970s, and I was named after the Greek hero, Jason, or Iosomos. Jason was, in Greek myth, he was a young prince who had been raised sort of in hiding, and when he came to adulthood, his uncle, who had usurped his throne, basically challenged him to go to a faraway kingdom in Colchis, which is modern-day Ukraine, I believe, to fetch a magical golden fleece from a golden ram that I think it had wings too. And the fleece it had healing powers, and a lot of people think it's like a symbol of manhood or kingship. Well, in order to accomplish this feat, this impossible task, seemingly impossible task of going to a foreign kingdom and bringing back this relic, Jason got the help of the gods, and he enlisted the help of heroes. The goddess Athena helped design a ship with the shipwright Argus, and they named it the Argo. And Jason recruited a crew of 50 heroes that he called the Argonauts to accompany him on his quest. And they got into adventures along the way, they got detoured along the way, and they eventually got to Colchis and recovered the Golden Fleece with the help, a lot of help, from a witch who Jason ended up marrying. So my parents named me after this Greek hero from this 3,000-year-old myth, and really they named me after this Greek hero who was featured in a 1963 movie called Jason and the Argonauts. But the movie was based on the much older myth. And I've always loved this idea of the Argonauts, this guy who is just plain old vanilla mortal. I don't think he had any supernatural blood in him like a lot of the other heroes of mythology. He was a human, but he was blessed by the gods. He was favored by the goddess Hera, and he got their assistance, but he was just a human, and he recruited these oftentimes extraordinary or superhuman friends to assist him in overcoming not just the quest of getting the fleece, but overcoming challenges along the way. And so that speaks to me because, one, being Greek, we as a people are very proud of our history and our heritage. Even though I don't speak Greek, even though I haven't been back to Greece since I was a child, it's still a very strong part of my identity. So I wanted to carry that forward with me. Also, this notion, the name, the Argonauts, Jason and the Argonauts. For a name and a story to live on for 3,000 years or so, there's power in that. And I'm hoping to harness some of that and use some of that and maybe get some of the analytics for when people are Googling it, because everybody that I've told the name of this podcast to has had to Google it. This is my attempt at finding and recruiting heroes to take on some really big, epically difficult problems that need to get solved or else. These are existential threats. And we don't think of them that way. We don't think of the housing crisis or the homeless crisis or mental health issues that are plaguing our people. We don't think of these things as existential threats, but they are. Our inability to have nuanced conversation with each other is an existential threat for our society. Our inability to spend time on boring problems and really solve them is an existential threat for us. And because we haven't been taught how to think that way, or really just because we're so busy just trying to survive in the day-to-day grind of our daily modern world, that people aren't aware. People aren't the scale necessary, aren't working on it. They're not willing to take it on, and oftentimes they don't even know that these problems really exist. Really, all that they can spare is to say, oh, well, we have a housing crisis? Let's just build more houses. They come up with these simple solutions. Why can't it be that simple? And then they don't go beyond that. I want to go beyond that. I want to create something, this show, this platform, as a means to get us to that elevated discourse where we're really, even when we disagree with each other, at least we're working towards the same ends, the same goal of solving our problems, not for ourselves, not for a profit motive, but because these are problems that need to be solved if we hope for our society as we know it and love it to continue. So that's why I'm here. That's why the show is called The Argonaut. That's where it came from, the ancient Greek myth. If you're listening to this, thank you. Thank you so much. I really hope that you can commit to coming with me on this journey and listening and giving me your feedback and being a part of it. Please like and follow and subscribe and share it with friends, because the more folks we have involved in this conversation, the better. Feel free to email me, jason@elcmaui.com. If you have any comments, if you have any recommendations for interviews or books that I should read or anything else, you can email me at jason, jason@elcmaui.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.